Folks, welcome to Quintessence, a series inspired by changes driven by technology across industries. My name is Pronoy, your host for this podcast episode, and I'm sitting down today with industry leaders to bring you their perspectives on the rapidly evolving landscape, the lessons they've learned, and on how to make an impact through innovation within their own ecosystems. On our podcast today, we will look to bring an outside-in perspective on the transformations within the insurance industry. Though historically considered a laggard from a technology adoption standpoint, the industry is seeing rapid change in terms of innovations that are reimagining processes, reevaluating tech stacks, and even setting up newer business models. On our podcast today, let's hear from our guests, our agents of change. We've got Nestor Lopez and Bhasker Kalita. Let me quickly introduce them. Nestor is the Chief Information Officer at ProSight Specialty Insurance Company. Nestor leads the information technology strategy and operations and execution of the digital strategy at ProSight. Previously, Nestor held various leadership roles at CNA Insurance, Fireman's Fund Insurance Company, and General Electric in information technology management, strategic sourcing, operations, and Six Sigma process improvement, and re-engineering. He graduated magna cum laude from the University of Puerto Rico with a degree in industrial engineering and holds an advanced certificate for executives in management, innovation, and technology from the MIT Sloan Executive Education Program. Welcome, Nestor. Welcome on today's podcast.
Thank you for having me.
Our second guest today for today's podcast is Bhasker Kalita, fondly known as BK. Bhasker leads the FSI vertical for Quantiphi Inc., a category-defining applied AI and machine learning software and services company. BK has spent more than a decade in the insurance industry solving transformational problems at the heart of the business, ranging from core systems transformation to modernization of data platforms, and more recently, applying AI and ML superpowers to reimagining fundamental business processes across the insurance value chain. BK holds a bachelor's degree from National Institute of Technology, Kurukshetra in India, and an MBA from Booth School of Business, University of Chicago. BK, as always, it's a pleasure speaking to you.
Thank you for having me, Pronoy.
Right. On today's podcast, we look at a temporal view of how the insurance industry has changed. We'll start looking at some of the key shifts and trends that have shaped where we are today. When we speak of the present, we can't go ahead without speaking about COVID as a use case and operational resilience. And we look at some of the future and the use cases that are going to drive future use cases per se. Mm-hmm. For my first question here, let me bring in Nestor. Nestor, based on your experience in the field of technology and insurance industry, what are some of the biggest shifts that you have witnessed in the industry for the last 10 to 15 years?
Great question. Over the last 10 to 15 years, I believe the insurance industry had been strengthening their foundation by modernizing their core systems and retiring some of their legacy systems. Some of them have also started the journey of moving their infrastructure from traditional data centers to cloud infrastructure. Mm-hmm. These transformations have enabled them to start building or expanding on existing capabilities, such as digital competencies, API strategies, as well as maturing their data and cyber security practices. Most recently, it has become essential to focus on digital transformation and obtaining more value from data. And this is important to improve customer experience and improve the scalability of the business. Some of the key innovations in the insurance industry, I believe, are driven by the use of cloud-native solutions, the use of telematics, and data from IoT devices and video, as well as how companies are leveraging third-party data, as well as machine learning and AI. Ultimately, it's about the customer experience. One, leveraging internal and external data to proactively issue a quote. or offer a new product to a customer, or offer a product to a potential customer. If you're able to leverage your own data and internal models and leverage external data, you should be able to put some of these products in front of these customers. And if they select it, can you deliver a simple experience to procure it? Mm-hmm. The same can be said in claims, where if an event happens, the ability to identify whether or not that take place, leveraging external data, and then automatically start the claim process and ultimately deliver a simple experience to pay for that claim, I think it will be essential. Now, to enable these experiences, you need to start looking also for low touch, no touch processes so that you enable the business to scale. Now, lastly, enabling continuous underwriting and to better manage risk, whether the risk is increasing or decreasing, and being able to more effectively determine what the premium amount is going to be, I think is going to be essential as well. Being able to calculate that accurate premium based on whether or not those risk factors are changing, I think is going to be critical. So those are some 4 examples. I think with that being said, I think it's with the understanding that the customer expectations and technology are ever evolving. So that's my perspective on your initial question.
No, thank you for bringing that up, Nestor. I'm going to bring BK into the discussion as well. BK, you've been in the data world for several years now, right? Mm-hmm. Specifically, if you look at data as an asset, how do you see data enabling this change in the last few years?
Sure, good question. So, insurance industry has always been a data-driven industry. You needed data to underwrite risks better, evaluate loss costs, helping insurers, design products efficiently, and assess risks better. In the last 10 to 15 years, the ability to gather and process huge volumes of data has vastly increased with the advent of modern technologies and especially cloud. With cloud, you can now seamlessly process petabytes of data, run predictive models, recommendation engines on top of them without even worrying about it, and something that was pretty impossible a few years ago. So that's been a big driver, which is technology change. Number 2, the change in the definition of customer. For a long period of time,
that's a great point.
Insurance industry used to only consider their producers as their de facto customers. And for all the right reasons, agents and brokers were the producers for a large segment of the population, and they still are. But in the last decade or so, the direct-to-consumer business has picked up. Customers are now more interested in knowing and evaluating their risks independently. Earlier, they used to always rely on an agent or a financial advisor. Now they do their own research. So you get more data points coming out from the end customer. So you have got more data points to collect, which will eventually help the insurer. Right? So that's number 2. And then finally, emerging risks, climate change. Your risks are changing significantly. I'm sure all of us have seen the news coming out of Bay Area recently. Unfortunate event, but these are a reality now. Wildfires, tsunamis. We are heading into a situation where a lot of the traditional risks will change, and we need more data to evaluate the new risk patterns. So the data points are going to significantly increase. You have the technology to support processing those data. So data is going to play a significant role or an enhanced role in this whole business.
Yeah, that's a great point, BK. A couple of things that really resonate with me very well. One is you mentioned about understanding the customer, right, and the definition of the customer. And I think Nestor also mentioned the point that the customer experience is now prime, right? Yeah. Nestor also mentioned an interesting point about how the experience is now moving to low touch, no touch, and no pun intended. When we look at more of the current world, looking at the onset of COVID, the entire paradigm of working has changed, right? Want to look at from a current scenario perspective, want to look at how the setup has changed, right, Nestor? With the onset of COVID, while the world is adapting to a new way of life, right, with work from home, digital engagements, like you said, is becoming the new norm. Can you talk to us about how digital transformation has been the key for insurers in ensuring, operational resilience?
Yes. First of all, my deepest sympathies to those impacted by these difficult times. I think when COVID started, all companies, or many companies or industries, not just the insurance industry, were challenged to validate that they had robust business continuity plans and that they could effectively enable their employees to work virtually and could effectively to ensure that they could effectively support their customers. I believe this time also highlighted the fact and the importance of adopting the cloud and digitizing those processes that were critical to respond to the customer needs. I also believe that it highlighted, to your point of digital transformation, highlighted the importance of offering self-service solutions. I think when you think about it from a IT infrastructure perspective as well, ensuring that you have the right, virtual private networks or your virtual desktop infrastructure, it became extremely important to enable your employees and your partners to securely work in a virtual environment without impacting productivity, and also because you wanted to keep everybody safe. I think during these times also maintaining the culture of your company has become critical, and I think technology plays a big factor there by making sure that we're offering collaboration tools to ensure that we can continue to move projects forward, but also to ensure that we stay connected. I think has also become important to ensure that you can still have live events with all the employees across the company to ensure that you're keeping them engaged and informed of what's happening across the organization. Now, moving forward, I think going back into digital transformation, I think the companies need to continue to look for digitizing some of those manual processes that maybe at some point you felt were nice to have. But if you want to be effective and want to improve your digital ecosystem or virtual ecosystem, you're going to have to now digitize those processes, and they're becoming now must-haves. So those are some initial thoughts to your question.
Makes sense. Bringing BK in again, BK, from your perspective, right? How do you see carriers adapt and respond to the several challenges faced by them due to COVID?
Yeah. First of all, I'll totally agree with Nestor. COVID-19 has been a change agent. Although it has, ravaging social, economic impacts. Condolences to all the folks who have been impacted. But COVID-19 is now emerging as an enabler and accelerator as far as digital transformation and touchless processes are concerned. It is almost a time machine shortening these transformation journeys. As Nestor rightly called out, most of the good to have, low touch processes that carriers have been thinking about, doing experiments with are now must haves. Some carriers who have been able to adapt quickly, these are the USAAs of the world who have been working with, initiatives or so-called garage initiatives like auto assessment of damages. They've been able to put those into real life as soon as COVID hit. While there are other carriers who were a little bit behind, and we talk to them day in, day out, and we have realized that they have started struggling. Call centers are not operational. There is one carrier with whom we talk regularly. Their senior execs have started taking calls. Nothing was working. So it's been a mixed bag. Those carriers who have had successes in the past or were experimenting with low touch and touchless processes, they have been able to pivot quickly. Those carriers who were actually a little bit behind, were more traditional, they have been impacted significantly. So it's been a mixed bag, as I called out earlier, and it will accelerate further digital transformation in a speed that has never been seen before.
Got it. No, great perspective. One thing that you mentioned was around, looking forward to these changes, right? Being ready, right?
Mhm.
And I think, even Nestor touched upon it. I'd like to take a moment here to also call out the fact that, in the space where, there is active change driven by carriers, right? I think that's where, we've seen examples of resilience
Mhm.
through exigent scenarios, right? And at this point, I just like to bring this in, right, for our audience. ProSight was recently named, and specifically Nestor was recently named, by Novarica as one of their Impact Award winners. This is typically presented to insurance CIOs and their teams for their accomplishments in delivering business impact with digital transformations, right? Uh, Nestor, firstly, congratulations on this significant achievement. We would love to hear from you some of the key highlights of this initiative from your perspective. For the folks out there working on challenging transformative initiatives under constraints, on technology platforms, what are some of the key learnings from your teams that you would like to share?
Yeah, no. First of all, thank you. It's always exciting to be recognized, and especially rewarding when the recognition comes from your industry peers, which is the case with the Novarica recognition. I think one of the key aspects, to being successful in these transformational efforts, it starts with having a good understanding of your foundation and make sure that you have, the right one. But also, most importantly, to make sure that you have the right team, both internally and external partners. Just to give you a little bit of background. So we made some early investments to modernize our policy and billing system. And we were also early adopters of moving to the cloud. Now, these efforts were very challenging. And after making these investments, we wanted to maintain them up to date in order for us to continue to take advantage of the latest features. So last year, we embarked on an effort to upgrade the policy and billing system to the latest versions of the platform. And these efforts were managed concurrently. And the team did an excellent job of delivering on these efforts, both on time and within budget. Now, I believe the cloud provided us with the flexibility that we needed to ensure that we were not impacting our production environments or our ability to serve our customers. Mm-hmm. Now, in addition to completing these upgrades, we also, during that time, decommissioned our legacy policy administration system. And now at ProSight, we are in a very strong position to continue to serve our customers and enable the business to continue to scale. Now we have a single policy administration system, a single billing system, and a single claim system. So this was a great effort by the team, and I am very proud of what they were able to accomplish. So again, thank you, but very exciting outcome, and I'm very excited about the recognition.
Thanks for sharing that, Nestor. Once again, congratulations. BK, question to you. Nestor brought the point about about legacy platforms, right? We've looked at legacy platforms. Obviously, the change that we're talking about, there have been changes to platforms from a data perspective as well, right? However, there is a gap, right? While legacy platforms continue to exist, the kind of use cases that we are seeing, you brought up a couple of great examples up front, right? There is a gap in terms of how does all of that downstream data gets managed, right? How can we effectively use, how can we build those foundations for more effective data use as part of downstream systems? Any thoughts on that?
Sure. So first of all, congratulations, Nestor. Great recognition, and especially as you called out by your peers. And one of the things that I want to call out, I've been in this core transformation business for a while, the ability to think about transformation as well as making sure you have a future ready platform that can exist for the next 10 to 15 years is critical. And you guys thinking about cloud in this whole transformation journey well ahead of some of the other peers is commendable. So congratulations one more time. I would like to call out the lack of focus in transforming data platforms concurrently along with your core systems. Most of the transformation journeys that I have seen, the data platform is always an afterthought. Let me focus on my policy, let me focus on my claims and billing, and then I'll take care of operational reporting as and when it comes. But with the advent of huge volumes of data, now with hyper personalization being a thing, where you need to know your customers better, the ability to have a modern data platform is paramount at this moment. So I would highly encourage all carriers to think about modernizing their data platforms along with your core transformation journeys. That's number one. Number two, I want to call out, the total cost of ownership of transforming data platforms have gone down significantly. There was a blocker earlier, where you have to think about equal amount of investments. When you're doing core transformation, you'll think, okay, I'm already making a huge investment. Do I need to again invest in modernizing my data platform? Can I do it sequentially? But what has happened with the advent of cloud and some of the native stack that's available out there, it's much more easier, cheaper, and faster to modernize your data platform concurrently. We have had examples where we were able to help customers modernize their entire data platform in 10 to 12 weeks, enabling certain domains, certain operational reporting. So the whole timeline has shrunk. The benefits out of a data platforms are enormous. So my one recommendation and thoughts as you ask this question will be to concurrently look at data platforms along with core transformation.
Right. It's a very interesting thought that you put out, PK. You spoke about being future ready. You spoke about investments, right? If I have to look at if I have to look at the future and question for Nestor, right? If we put together, if you're looking into a crystal ball and if you have to make bets about which of some of these technologies are going to stand out in the near future, right? How would you think about it, right? One of the things that you mentioned around the use of technology like IoT, telematics, AI/ML, cloud technologies, right? You spoke about them being more, must-haves than good-to-haves, right? Nestor, can you talk to us a little bit about some of these emerging technologies which you feel are here to stay?
Yeah, no, definitely. From my perspective, and you touched on some of them must have to support growing digital expectations as well as the needs from customer and agents, I believe are going to be one, leveraging the cloud and cloud native solutions. I also believe that building microservice strategies or robust APIs, leveraging third-party data to drive digital transformation or digital experiences, I think are going to be key, as well as through that enabling straight-through processing, like we have discussed earlier, whether it's no touch or low touch. I believe that RPA also could play a big factor in driving efficiencies, especially if you still rely on legacy systems or you don't have an efficient or effective way of driving integrations. Most importantly, I think leveraging AI, machine learning, and real-time data to enable continuous underwriting and pay-as-you-go capabilities, I think are going to be essential. So those are some of my initial thoughts in terms of what are some of my bets.
Got it. And again, bringing BK in, right? BK, the whole AI ML space, right? It's a bread and butter for us as part of Quantiphi. You spoke initially about some very interesting use cases, right? The one with with USA, for example. Can I ask you to elaborate a little bit in terms of what some of these use cases would look like? Which of these use cases do you feel are going to get more hardened and are going to become part of more mainstream?
Sure. So I'll answer this question in two folds. One, from a business perspective, right? So in the future, we are looking at new operating models. Pay as you go is an operating model that is becoming extremely prevalent. Then you are looking at hyper personalization, customizing products for the need of one customer, right? So that's becoming a key aspect. So these two are, from business perspective, these are critical. Now, how do you support these two factors from a technology standpoint? So if I can talk about AI ML and usage of AI ML in the insurance industry, there are three fundamental segments. One is the whole statistical ML segment, which is around recommendations, predictions, and all these existed in the industry for a long time. You were making forecasting, you were making predictions around your loss ratios, your loss likelihood curves, etc. But what has happened with deep learning and neural net, you are able to actually predict them better with huge volumes of data, right? So that has advanced. So it was already existing, it has advanced now. The second aspect that has now entered the insurance paradigm is the whole deep learning stack, starting with conversational AI. Obviously chatbots, voice bots were there for a long time, but now it has changed into a very different space with newer advancement in natural language processing, in language models, etc. You are able to give a very different experience to your customer using voice bots and chatbots. So that has it's now accelerating. Along with it, I think the whole paradigm of unstructured data in the insurance industries is a problem. It has not been solved for a while, but with document understanding AI and all the advancements that has happened from an AI ML standpoint, is now it is giving us a lot of hope in terms of solving the problem of unstructured data. And I see more and more use cases coming from that space. And then if I look forward 12 to 18 months, I feel like computer vision will enter the insurance industry big time. USAA has already made a move with auto assessment of damages. There are a few other carriers looking at it, but the whole stack of looking at video analytics, looking at images, being able to predict on the fly will become a must have rather than good to have as we progress down the path. And I'm from a ProSight standpoint also, in the commercial segment, there are similar use cases that ProSight has been trying to use. So I feel like in the AI ML space and insurance industry, I think that these are the different categories of use cases that you will see as we progress further.
Awesome. I think BK, thanks for summarizing it for me in that manner. I think that helps look at the landscape very holistically. At the end, if I have to summarize some of the key points that you mentioned, right, from our conversation today, one, obviously, customer will continue to be king. The understanding of the customer will evolve, and I think the biggest shift for us is going to be to think of the whole scenario as a time machine, right? And as BK, I think that point sort of just brings me to the level where you said thinking of being more future ready, right? Will have to be thought through in terms of how we not only look at some of our processes, but also look at how we look at some of our touch points, right? Where there are more emerging touch points or moments of truth within the insurance value chain. Having said that, really appreciate the time that you've taken for today's chat. Gives us a great view of the changes and what the future holds for us. It's exciting to be a part of this industry as we look at some of the changing landscape and what the opportunities in the future holds for us. Thank you, Nestor. Thank you, BK. Have a good evening.
Thank you again.
Yeah, thanks.